Hello?
Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? What's up, everybody? I'm Phil.
And I'm Cameron.
Two Navy vets, just here to talk politics.
And we're here with some differing views, but we're here to have a civil and a healthy discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Pocket Politics. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Pocket Politics. This is officially episode 3. Cam, how you doing?
I'm doing well today, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it was a stressful week, but I made it through, and I was able to finally get some research done, and that way I'm not going to sound an idiot about all of the governor's races. So,
Okay, well, you know what? There is plenty to talk about, as always, with politics. Why don't we start out with going to the former president himself, Mr. Donald Trump. So last Sunday, the New York Times had released an article where they said Trump is seriously considering announcing his nomination, or announcing that he will be running for president in 2024. And they said it could come as soon as this month, being here in July.
yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. So I'll just throw it out there. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, I listened to a couple podcasts. They don't think it's going to happen. But the interesting part about that is he's skirting a really fine line, because the way he is raising money and not officially running for office, there's some kind of legal middle ground there that, you know, he could potentially be liable legally for some of this money that he's raising based on the fact that he's gonna run but not really announce that he's running. So kind of an interesting side subject there.
Yeah, because he's been raising money ever since, he left the White House.
Yeah, I call that grifting. I mean, he's basically getting people to donate money to him for no fucking purpose other than the fact that he has not announced his campaign yet. And just to keep him in business. Because otherwise he'd probably be broke. I mean,
So,
you imagine the legal fees that he's paying? I mean,
and that he may be paying soon.
yeah.
So looking at Trump, one of the things that we saw with Trump when he was in the White House, he was infamous for, once the press would come down on him hard, or just, the public was coming down on him hard, or his, ratings, or, approval rating or whatever was taking a dip, he would come out with something bombastic. It was almost, it's his deflecting tactics, I guess, if you will. And there's been some people that are saying that he's feeling the pressure from the January 6th committee, et cetera, et cetera. And this may just be a classic Trump move, like, hey, look, I'll put the spotlight back on me. I'm just going to announce that I'm running for president.
Well, and that's very possible. I just don't think he can handle taking the L again. You know, I don't think I think he's too much of a baby to run and lose. And so, therefore, he is not going to risk it. And, he didn't actually intend to be the president in the first place anyway. I mean, Michael Cohen said multiple times that he ran to boost his value in
brand.
society, his brand, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of theories. I mean, I even thought that back in 2015 when he first announced. I was like, well, this is just kind of a classic. Let's have a little fun this summer, and by the fall, I'll be out of this thing, but I'll boost, like you just said, his brand or whatever. So
yeah, it was like the old Seth Meyers joke at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's like, when he said Trump announced that he was running for president as a Republican. He's like, that's funny. We all thought you were running as a joke.
I think he does. I think he wants to get back in the race. Here's the thing, though. I think Mitch McConnell and just about all the mainstream Republicans right now have been vomiting in their mouth the last week or two that he's been flirting with this announcement. Like it, love it, hate it. A lot in the GOP have hitched their wagon to him, and now they're sitting there at his mercy, right? Is he going to run? Is he not going to run? There's a list of other Republicans that are talking about running in 2024. Of course, none have announced a candidacy yet, but they're all being held hostage right now. They don't know, well, geez, do I put my name out there? Oh, hang on, I don't want to get in the way of Trump. So, you've got all these people. Like I said, I think Mitch McConnell is just sitting there like, please go away. And there's a number of Republicans, supposedly, none of them really gone on record, but this is just what people are whispering, is are sitting there saying, hey, please hold off until the midterms are at least out of the way. Don't bring any more baggage into the midterms than we already have. But I ultimately think he's going to run. I have heard through the grapevine, supposedly people close to Trump have said that he has privately told people that if he's not the nominee for the Republican Party, stand by because he'll torpedo the election. Some have suggested maybe he'd do that by running third party. There was some rumors once maybe Trump wanted to create a third party, calling it the Patriots Party.
I would love that. That'd be the best thing that ever happened for people like me.
Well, I'll be honest with you. He does that. He will torpedo the election. I mean, he'll put a Democrat right in the White House if he does that.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably one that people aren't going to like. That's going to be way more liberal than Joe Biden.
Potentially. And so that's why I think this is... I mean, at the end of the day, is he running around grandstanding for headlines? Maybe, but this bears talking about because this is impactful as everybody sits here yet again waiting to see what Donald Trump is going to do in 2024. I mean,
in that case, please do run and Andrew Yang for 2024 or something,
Yeah.
But, you mentioned him feeling the heat from the January 6th committee. I think he should be feeling the heat from Fani Willis's attorney general, or Fani Willis's grand jury in Georgia. I mean, these subpoenas that came out this week is crazy. I mean, the fact that a member of Congress is subpoenaed to go talk about it along with Meadows, all these people, and this is not like a subpoena from Congress that they were able to kind of wiggle their way out of. This is a real deal court of law special grand jury, which even has more overarching legal authority than a grand jury. This is like a big deal. And I think he needs to be afraid, because I think that if anything is going to get him in hot water and potentially get him in serious legal trouble, it's going to happen in Georgia before it happens federally and before it happens anywhere else.
You are not the only one saying that. There has been... I've actually read a few different articles this week and heard some different newscasters saying that, Georgia may be this may be the thing that actually really sticks to him.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, this week, I think it's certainly big when you see these subpoenas coming out for Senator Lindsey Graham, Rudy Giuliani.
Eastman is in there.
Eastman's
too.
In there, yeah, he is.
The Kraken, what's her name? That female lawyer.
Yep, she's in there. There's a couple female attorneys that are on there. Graham is fighting it.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that here at the end of the week. He's fighting it and convinced or was telling people, I won't have to go down there. I'll get this thing taken care of. But,
well, he may not have to go down there, but he's certainly going to have to appear in some sort in front of this special grand jury. Now, I will tell you that this has a lot of other implications too, right? Mark Meadows is on that list.
He is, yeah.
And remember, he's the guy that they kind of said he had voted in Georgia, but never really established residency there, so it was kind of a voting scandal anyway. So he could get... This is the thing, is because of that voting scandal with Mark Meadows, they could use that as leverage. Say, look, we already got you red-handed. You're going to jail or suffering some sort of legal consequences, but they could use that as leverage to get him to pop off on Trump. And I think that's an interesting angle, because if they say, hey, we're willing to forgive the fact that you established a residence that wasn't actually a residence and you never really were a Georgia voter, yet you voted here in the 2020 election, we're willing to forgive that if you basically spill the beans. And I think that's where the biggest implication is gonna come.
Almost squeezing him right into a corner.
Oh yeah.
And maybe get more out of him than like the January 6th committee.
I mean, I'm no lawyer, but if you were a lawyer, isn't that what you would do?
Of course. I mean, yes. I think that's what any lawyer would probably want to do.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I think it's one of these we just have to wait and see how it all plays out with that one. But to me, that was a real news headline this week when I heard about that one, especially when they started talking about the subpoenas and I saw, Graham was on there. Because The big thing they're going after Lindsey Graham, or they want to hear from Lindsey Graham about, is how he directly contacted the state about the election. And Graham is saying, well, as a senator, I just want to, it's my job to make sure elections are fair. And people are saying, well, okay, but then why did you directly call Brad Raffensperger, the state attorney general, et cetera? Why weren't your aides working this if they were just gathering data? Because that's what he's like, well, I'm gathering data to make sure everything's good. And so now there's a number of people saying, well, wait a minute, Senator. Normally when you do that, your aides, et cetera, your staff gathers this information for you so you have it in front of you. It's apparently not normal for the senators themselves to be directly calling to get data like that.
No, I agree 100%. And since we brought up January 6th committee as well, it should be mentioned that this week we learned that Pat Cipollone is going to basically give them his testimony. Yeah. He had spoken with them previously, but it wasn't under oath. It was like an informal kind of information. But I think
he went in yesterday and talked for 8 hours.
Yeah, after the Cassidy Hutchinson interview, I think they basically got a lot of information that they did not know and now have good ground to get Cipollone involved and find out what exactly was going on.
Yeah, I mean, they spent, like I said, 7 or 8 hours, I think it was, yesterday talking to him, and supposedly have recorded all of this, so it'll be interesting to hear what comes out. So some of the committee members have leaked a little bit on, I shouldn't say leaked, but have kind of talked a little bit about what went on during their 7 or 8 hours with them, and what I'm hearing is, hey, when we release what we learned, etc., we definitely learned some new things, and so I'm curious to hear what those new things are. I think just the fact that he was ready to talk, I think that in and of itself is newsworthy, and we'll see kind of how he ties all of that in. Or how all of that ties in with what has already been testified with the January 6th committee.
Yeah, and then we'll move on. But did you also hear that they've added a new prime time? So there's now going to be.
I heard that. Yep.
Instead of one more prime time hearing, there's going to be 2 more now, which is good.
I heard that. The January 6th committee itself will be back. I mean, we're going to see him again this week. Of course, I expect to see the Cipollone stuff. But what I also heard. What the committee is saying is that they this week or these next upcoming 2 or 3 segments or whatever they're going to do, expect to hear about I guess the Trump White House and their connections to some of these Proud Boys and some of these other groups. So that'll be interesting to see if they can actually pin. I don't know, say Mark Meadows. What are they getting at? Was he out there texting or somehow communicating with, say, the Proud Boys about January 6th? I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just simply speculating.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he was, but we'll see.
That'll be interesting, though. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing, again, just like I have been with each one of their things, what they've got to say. And as like I said, with the January 6th, stuff. I mean, you mentioned the Georgia lawsuit. I mean, it's all kind of tying in, kind of coming to a head for the former president here. And speaking of presidents, Phil, I don't know if you picked up on this at all, but I saw last weekend. I was watching one of the Sunday news shows. It was actually ABC, and they sat down and did an interview with Liz Cheney, and I thought it was a good interview, and of course she's people want to talk to Congresswoman Cheney right now. I mean, she's all over the news, being one of only 2 Republicans working on the January 6th committee. We know she's been very outspoken against President Trump for a while now, and when she was being interviewed, she was asked, "Are you going to run for president?" or something to that effect. Are you interested in running for president? And I will tell you, I've seen that question posed to, politician after countless politician over the years, and many of them, most of them, in fact, come forward and just simply say, "Oh, not something I would ever be interested in." And then, of course, 3 months later, you see him throw their name in the hat. Anyway, with Congresswoman Cheney, she just looked at the camera and said, "I haven't made a decision yet on on running for president.
Well, I don't know if I said it on the podcast previously, or if I just said it in conversation with you, but I've said it to multiple people. I mean, like, depending on who she's running against, she could get my vote. I mean, because she's standing up for what's right, and we just need more of that in politics.
Oh, yeah.
Democratic or Republican, we need that in politics. And she's a shining example in the country right now of a politician like, you know what, we may not agree on everything, but she is standing up for what she believes in. Now, that being said, if she runs against Biden, yeah, I'd probably vote for her. I just don't think, I don't know. I like Biden, you know, he's America's grandpa, but he's just not getting the message across and not getting stuff done. And it's not really his fault, but yet he is taking so much flack, and that's not doing anything good for our country.
Well, on Biden, it seems like his approval ratings go down every week.
Yeah, well, but for no particular reason, just that, 38% of America loves to shit on America's grandpa. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's like he goes and eats ice cream, and they shit on him for it. It's like...
Well, going back to Cheney, though, I've got my thoughts on what she's working with here. Like, I've said all along, and I think I may have even said it on the podcast here, maybe the first episode or something, I think Liz Cheney is someone who, yes, she is committing basically political suicide this year by working with the January 6th committee. I mean, in all likelihood, she's going to get primaried out in Wyoming here in August and, be out of a job, so to speak.
But you never know.
Well, no, and exactly, right? But, she's got a steep hill to climb. And so with that being said, I think Cheney's doing is I think she sees herself as, you said it before, she's standing up for what she believes in, and there's a lot to be said for that. I think she sees herself as that phoenix that's going to rise from the ashes out of the GOP. Hey, after Trump and Trumpism is burned down and we can expose it for all it is, I will be that person who rises up out of the ashes and says, see, I told you so. I was never one who went along with that. And here I am, right? Kind of poising herself for a future. I don't, let's just say Cheney is primaried out. I don't think for a second she's done with politics. I don't think she wants to be done with politics. But what I think, a couple of things here. Along her presidential bid, I think she is determined to have Trump out of the White House. We talked a little bit ago about Trump possibly running third party. What I think Liz Cheney may try and do, if let's say Trump is the nominee for the Republicans, I could totally see her running third party. Kind of an interesting ticket, like let's just say, and I'm purely speculating here, but Cheney, Vice President Adam Kinzinger, perhaps on her ticket. Again, purely.
Yeah, I don't know if I see that, but
pure speculation.
Yeah, I think Cheney's too smart. I think Cheney's too smart to know that third-party runners just screw things up.
But you know what? I think that's why she would do it. I think she would do it simply to keep Trump out. Because if Cheney were to run as a third party, is she going to win? No. Is she going to pull some votes? She will. And again, now we're splitting. We talked earlier about Trump running third party. Well, let's say Cheney splits the vote. She would keep him out of the White House.
I think it's more likely that she tries to keep him out of the White House with the results of January 6th committee. So
we'll see. I think there's something there. The other thing about Cheney and her primary that's kind of funny, if you think, I heard something recently that in the state of Wyoming, obviously she's down the polls, but she's actually banking on or hoping to get some Democrats, because I think Wyoming is an open primary state, so she's hoping to get some Democrats to vote for her in a primary to put her over the top. I just find that kind of funny that we have a Cheney that's like I don't want to say pandering, but hoping and counting on some Democrats to vote for her.
No, it is funny, but I guess speaking of potential candidates for the next presidential election, what do you think? Do you think that Gavin Newsom is preparing to run?
I do. I actually do. I looked at his. Well, this past week or so, there's been the California governor, Gavin Newsom, he has been running ads in Florida, of all places, attacking...
On Fox News in Florida.
On Fox in Florida, attacking Governor Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida.
Yep.
And so I first heard about that, and I thought, well, this is kind of crazy. What are we doing with this? Or I shouldn't say, what are we? What is the governor doing with this? The only thing I can think of is that he is fishing for, to see where he can go with a possible presidential bid in 2024. To answer your question, yes, I think he's going to run in I think he's considering it. Mm-hmm. And maybe, you know what? Maybe there's more to this than we think. Maybe there's some key Democrats are urging him to run, thinking, hey, Biden is maybe not going to run in 2024. Maybe for whatever reason, he just doesn't feel like running. We need somebody out there. I will say this, Gavin Newsom is someone that hasn't really run before, right? The Democrats have kind of rehashed a lot of people back and forth. I
don't like him, and I know
I'm not a fan of him either. But.
Yeah, and I lived in California for, almost 7 years. I know a lot of Californian Democrats that don't like him. It's just that he's the best option they have right now, So I don't know if it'd be a good thing. I do like the ad, slamming DeSantis and saying, "Hey, if if you're stuck there and you're a Democrat, you can move to California." I just like the optics of, or I like the picture in my mind of a bumper sticker that says, "Don't Florida my California."
Isn't it? Well, I've seen that. I've also seen a bumper sticker somewhere that says, "Don't DeSantis my California," something like that. No, well. Again, I didn't say I like the guy, but I mean the question was, do I think he runs? I think he's looking at it. Do I think he's electable? Good luck on that one. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I just think he'd lose in the primary. I mean, and
well, it depends who he goes against, though, too.
True.
I mean, honestly, right? I mean, right now, obviously Biden sitting in the White House, up to him whether he wants to run. If he does, he'll be the Democratic nominee. Have you really heard of any other names kicked around, though, for a possible 2024 on the Democrat side? I mean, other than Governor Newsom, I really haven't been hearing much in the way of names.
I mean, I hear that a lot of support for not Biden and not Harris. I mean,
I've heard that too.
That's a big portion of it. I don't know that I've heard that many other names.
I was just curious.
It wouldn't surprise me if a couple of the candidates from last cycle run again. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't heard much in that way. I want to say this, though, about those ads. I did see the ad, or I don't know if he's got multiple ads, but I saw one of them. And I found it almost ironic that his ad is basically talking about freedom, freedom, freedom. And if you love freedom, look at getting rid of your governor and move to California if you're looking for freedom. And I was just sitting there saying to myself, isn't this ironic? Because for the last, I don't know how many years, decades really, that has been a Republican virtue, freedom. You have heard that from just about every Republican out there. We're here for your freedoms and freedom of this, that, and the other. So to hear a Democrat, in particular the California governor Gavin Newsom, on TV in an ad talking about freedom as a Democrat, I just found that ironic. Whether he's making a good point or not, I just found it kind of ironic of how I guess these tables have turned a little bit, at least in the ads.
Yeah, but the tables have not turned a little bit; they've turned a lot. That's like that. That's a typical thing. Yeah, do we all want freedom? We all want freedom, but guess what? The Democrats aren't the party trying to take away your freedom to get an abortion. The Democrats aren't the party trying to take away the freedom to go to school, or you know what I mean? I think I said that backwards, but they're not, and nothing says freedom like getting shot at a 4th of July parade and having nobody really do anything about it.
Well, which now that you brought that up, Phil, what we had certainly another mass shooting here earlier in the week.
America.
As you just mentioned, at a 4th of July parade. Where does this move the political needle at all? What is any kind of fallout expected from this? I mean, obviously, terrible death. We've got 7 deaths. I think the death toll's at 7. I know several were critically or injured in the shooting. But Does this move the political needle at all with guns, or where do you see this going, shaping any elections?
Of course it does. I mean, people are sick and tired of not being able to do stuff safely, right? Turns out these days you're not safe in malls, you're not safe in movie theaters, you're not safe in schools, you're not safe at a 4th of July parade. I mean, people are getting sick and tired of it, and I think that's why this is yet another add-on that's going to spur the Democratic vote in November.
So here's my take on it from a purely political perspective, and I am not trying to downplay what happened by any means. I think from just a political fallout from it, I don't think we hear much, because I think the politicians are sitting there right now saying, well, we have this bipartisan gun control bill. It's going through. Let's give it some time. Let's see what happens from this, yada, yada, yada. I think they almost feel as if that's a safety blanket over them. And, hey, we've got a little something we can throw out there to deflect. Don't look at us too much. We just did something. Give us a little bit of time here to get in. But I guess my answer is I don't think it's going to move the political needle really at all on this.
Yeah, I disagree. I think this is going to energize Democrats to get out there and vote.
It could. I mean, there are some other social issues that are energizing Democrats, so it could be one that goes in on that. But again, it is something that we are seeing in our nation, and we'll see how it plays out in the coming months here, I guess, when it's time to vote.
Yeah, the legislation isn't going to change much. That's my biggest fear, but we'll move on.
Speaking of social issues, Phil, coming out of Ohio, there is a 10-year-old girl who was denied an abortion in Ohio.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
I know you don't, but I think this bears some discussion. 10-year-old girl denied an abortion in Ohio. Background on the story, she was, I guess, either abused, raped, etc., but she was at the 6-week and 3-day mark. And Ohio's law is no abortions after 6 weeks. So she was 3 days past that and was denied an abortion.
Yeah, I think when we spoke before this, I mentioned Elian Gonzalez. For those of you that may or may not know who that is, I just don't like trying to make a martyr out of one poor girl. She's a child. She's 10 years old. Mm-hmm. She's already gone through enough trauma.
Sure.
We don't need to add this to the list, right? And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to talk about it. It's like the abortion thing's so fucked up already. Okay, here's a perfect example. What are we going to do about it? Nothing, because nobody can legislate the Supreme Court, right?
So I will say this. One case here I don't think is going to change the world, but what I think, I will say this. I think cases like this, and there's going to be more to come like this. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
There is going to be more cases come like this. And so I think as these cases start to mount, I think this is something that can play into the Democrats' hands this fall. And this one case, I got it. May just kind of be like you said, that one case. Hey, let's not sit there and put the spotlight on a poor 10-year-old girl. And by the way, this is whoever did this is heinous. This is a 10-year-old girl we're talking about. And this poor girl now, her parents apparently are having to truck her across state lines somewhere. I think I heard Indiana to get an abortion, but Indiana's laws anyway, there's a lot to this, right? But what I'm getting at is I think the Democrats can take this, along with other cases like this that pop up, and use it as something to galvanize their base, or at least get their base energized. You mentioned the guns a minute ago that we know has energized Democrats.
That's why I said let's just leave it at the abortion thing is fucked up. The Supreme Court thing is fucked up. Let's not even talk about this girl, right? Because that's the worst thing. Okay, people always say don't politicize this, don't politicize that. If the Democrats should not talk about this girl as a reason to get elected, right? It wasn't Republican lawmakers, right, that are on the ballot that changed the Supreme Court decision, right? They didn't affect that. I mean, they did to an extent over time, but I'm over it. I'm tired of talking about it.
I know you are, but I will say this. I think people are driven by emotion, and stories like this tear at people's heartstrings, is what I'm saying. And I think if they can if they can galvanize this, again, I'm not saying you politicize a 10-year-old girl. I'm not trying to say that. But what I'm saying is I think stories like this can play into their playbook this fall.
I heard you.
And I think they.
I heard you
this
just
is something
now.
they can
I
run
heard you
on.
the other day. I just don't. I'm tired of talking about it. It's like, dude, I got a daughter.
I have one too.
You got a daughter.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. Like, the shit just makes me so sick. I don't even want to, like, I will talk about Kristi Noem being a piece of shit when she was interviewed on, CNN, I think it was.
Well, so for Governor Noem, it was CNN, actually. It was last Sunday I saw her.
Yeah.
I will say this, because they were really pressing her on that abortion issue. And it was Dana Bash that was interviewing her. And I will say, first of all, the state of South Dakota, I think virtually all abortions are illegal with the exception of, I think, if it's the life of the mother is endangered. Anyway, Governor Noem, she was pressed by Dana Bash, like, hey, should this 10-year-old be allowed an abortion? It looked to me like Kristi Noem was about to break down. Like, I think it tore at her heartstrings. Now, she played the political line saying, well, the voters in South Dakota have voted and this is how our laws are.
Yeah, she's a piece of shit.
Well, I think even she was moved by it. So like I said, issues like this can definitely move the needle. But with that being said, I want to switch gears because I know Phil's tired of talking about the abortion thing, and we'll move on to something else.
I'm not tired of talking about the abortion thing. I'm tired of talking about the 10-year-old girl. But
anyway,
I get you.
Hey, Phill, can you tell our listeners how they could contact us? Because that is something I'm hearing. Hey, do you guys have an email address, and you want to provide it for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, most of our listeners would probably contact us through phone or text because there's so few of them that they all know us and they're in our group. So please definitely feel free to contact us. We love the feedback. We got some really good feedback from last week's episode from multiple different people. I will say we have our email, so if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us both at CameronandPhill@gmail.com. That's CameronandPhill@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out. And while we're talking about our listeners and people giving us feedback, please like, subscribe, give us 5-star ratings on Apple, whatever it is you can do to boost us, and then get the word out there. Share us, help us make our audience bigger. So you guys, we can't do it. We have a fairly limited friend group, and a lot of the people that are in our friend group don't want to get involved with politics anyway. And probably don't want to listen to us talk outside of work or whatever the case is anyway. So please get that out there, support us, and we'll keep doing what we're doing.
That being said, I continue to hear positive things. The people that are listening sounds like they like it, and so it's nice. It's nice when we hear things. And
exactly.
It is definitely nice to hear that people can appreciate what it is that we're talking about, trying to put out there, and how we have conversations and just move, and how it moves from there. So again, just like Phill said, please hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. So
CameronandPhill@gmail.com.
Can't say that enough.
All right. So now we're going to talk about something that most people interested in national politics probably do not care that much about. However, we are going to delve in because we pushed it off from last week's episode. So we are going to talk about the governor's races. Do you know how many governor's races there are this year or in November?
36, I think.
That is correct, 36. Yeah. So right on the dot, 36 races. And you know what? At the end of the day, why do we care about governor races? Why do you care?
Well, governor races right there. That is who's running your state.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but, it's funny that I don't think either one of us are going to talk about our states.
I'm not lined up to talk about my home state, so... I've got several states to talk about, and I'm ready to talk about them.
Okay. So, I think my state is a sealed deal. So instead, we will start with. You want to start with Arizona?
A lot to talk about there. Sure. Thanks for throwing that one to me.
We don't have to spend too much time on it because the primaries aren't all done, so we kind of have an idea, but we don't know.
But you know what? I would love to talk about it.
Okay.
So for our listeners, here's what's going on in Arizona. Right? There's a fairly tight race with a Republican primary right now. There's 4 candidates in there, and 2 of them have really kind of risen to the top. right now, the front runner is a lady named Carrie Lake. And,
who is batshit crazy.
Well, Carrie Lake she has got the endorsement of former President Trump.
Yeah,
and
you know what? Which is probably more valuable than a complete lack of experience in politics, or running anything of sorts.
So,
right?
Touching on what you just said about her lack of experience, so she is not a career politician. She was a news anchor up until like a year ago, right, Phill?
But I want to like reframe this real quick, because people always say that, like, you know, Trump came in, he was not a career politician. We want somebody that's an outsider. Here's the thing. That's great that you want somebody that's a political outsider. I'm kind of on board with that too. But it has to be somebody who managed something. She talks in front of a camera. She has no experience in leadership, right? She has no experience in managing large organizations. All right?
That's why I say
she's got... Just like Trump. I mean, Trump managed an organization, but it wasn't all that large.
So she, like I said, I think it was about a year ago she was still giving the news out there in Arizona.
Yeah.
I think about a year ago. So I will say this. Here...
And 10 years ago, she was a Democrat, voting for Democrats.
Well, Trump was a Democrat not that many years ago either. Yeah. So, but with that being said, I watched a primary debate between the 4 GOP candidates. That was wild. Here, I want to just say this, right? I watched it on YouTube. I feel bad for that moderator, because he was sitting there obviously trying to do his best while they're all basically yelling at each other. At one point, he had to whistle. He resorted to trying to whistle to get everyone's attention to calm them down. So that poor guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, during the debate, I heard a number of things. Basically, Karen Taylor Robson is the one who's trailing Lake, and she kept calling Carrie Lake fake Lake, to which Lake would yell back at her. At one point, Carrie Lake asked him who on this stage believes that the election in Arizona, or the 2020 election, was fake. 3 of the 4 hands went up. Robson's did not. And then it went into like a 10-minute talk about who believed even greater into the conspiracies behind the 2020 election, and that just sort of went on a wild ride. Then there's a gentleman there named Scott Neely who's a businessman. He runs a construction corporation, I guess, in Arizona, and he's running. He started talking about how he's helped build the wall in Arizona, and he's like, elect me and I'll drive the steel for the wall myself down there and start building it. Then it
was literally the craziest debate I've ever seen.
The only thing that it was lacking, I thought,
was Herschel Walker.
Okay, you got me there. I didn't think of that one, but was food. I thought at one point we were going to see a cafeteria food fight. Yeah. And at one point, Scott Neely said, I haven't been on stage with this many women since I was at a bridal shower, and the moderator's like, man, Scott, I don't know how that's going to be taken, but anyway, I mean, it was just that bizarre.
Yeah, it was crazy. I watched it as well.
Yeah, so. One of the women, the older, and she's polling so low I don't even remember her name.
Yeah, she's polling less than 1% or something.
Yeah, that
was her big debate was was whether it was 0 or 1%.
1%. And then at one point, they're asking her about the abortion and about how should abortion be legal in the state of Arizona in the case of rape and incest? And she just kind of looked at the camera and's like, well, I really don't know. Now, I have news for you. If you're running for office in 2022 and someone brings abortion up, the words, I don't really know, should not come out of your mouth. Pick one side or the other. One side's going to love you, one side's going to hate you. But the fact she just kind of sat there and said, well, I don't really know on that issue. Yeah. Anyway, big food fight. But what it's looking like right now is Carrie Lake sitting there with about a 4-ish% lead over Karen Taylor Robson. And it's, again, looking like Lake, it's her race to take, but she is seeing that gap closing. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we've spent all this time. Let's not forget about the incumbent, who stands a really good chance, right? So, Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, is a really good candidate, and she's got a really good message. She's a good speaker.
So what it looks like is she's going to cruise through her primary. I think there's only one challenger in her primary, and it doesn't look like she's going to have much of a challenge.
Yeah, and I think just like a lot of the country, Arizonians, however you would say that, are pissed off.
think it's Arizonians, but we'll go with that because it sounds good.
Yeah. And they're pissed off. And so, and keep in mind, there's a lot of people. I mean, Arizona is no longer the retirement community for the Midwest as much as it has been in the past, right? It is very, very blue. I mean, that's where a lot of California Democrats go because they can't afford California anymore.
Yeah.
So,
well, that and Nevada. Nevada's another state where they've gone to. Yeah.
But that's, that's huge. And I think that Katie Hobbs is going to win.
So I saw it was on, I think it was Real Clear Politics had a poll. One of the polls I saw in there, assuming Hobbs and Lake are the finalists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming they're the nominees, I should say. Saw a poll that had Hobbs at 45%, Lake at 44%. So I think that one will be, I don't know. I think that one's going to be really close. I think the primaries, again, I think the only real fight there in the primary is going to be on the Republican side. I think you're right. I think Katie Hobbs sails to victory, but I think that Hobbs-Lake race is going to be tight. And honestly, I look forward to watching it in the coming months as it plays out. Don't you, Phill?
I do. Now, with that being said, we don't need to spend probably more than like a minute and a half on it, but I just am slightly interested in Kansas's.
Sure, yeah.
Kansas's Governor Laura Kelly is running against this guy Richard Karnowski, who's like again another one who probably isn't experienced enough to run a whole state. And Laura Kelly is doing pretty good. I think the only reason this is this is interesting at all is because Laura Kelly is behind. Currently, she's not that far behind.
I think it's only like 4 points.
Yeah, so she's not that far behind, but she is behind. However, Kansas is like, it's not a big state.
Pretty
right?
red, though.
It's very red.
Yeah.
However, it's got huge liberal outposts in Wichita, the Kansas City suburbs.
I was going to say probably the Kansas City suburbs.
Lawrence, two big universities in Lawrence and Manhattan. So Kansas is interesting. I mean, Laura Kelly, did a fairly good job until basically the state legislature stopped her from making any progress, similar to our president right now. So that's an interesting one to watch. And
you think she's going to go down this fall?
I do. Yeah, personally I do. It's unfortunate, but I do think she's going to lose.
You just think it's too red of a state? She's going to have too much of an uphill battle, probably. Yeah.
I think it's like MAGA headquarters in Kansas or something. I mean, obviously that's probably Florida, but Kansas is really MAGA heavy. I mean,
like I said, when I looked at the polls earlier today, it looked like it was only about a 4% difference, but I mean, we'll have to see on that one and watch. And it is early, right? These polls will kind of ebb and flow as time goes on.
Yeah,
so definitely a race to keep an eye on.
I'll just tell you, I was in Kansas. I went to go watch a basketball game earlier this year. And the driving from Wichita to Lawrence was like the craziest thing because we could turn on these like FM and AM radio stations that were just like evangelists talking like their own radio show, and it was literally nuts. My wife and daughter and I were like super entertained listening to these radio shows on the drive.
Well, with that being said, why don't we shift into another pretty much a really tough race going on right now, Phill, and that's Georgia. Thoughts on the race down Georgia with Kemp and Abrams?
Yeah, I think Abrams actually stands a chance. I mean, she's really good on the ground. And we're going to talk about another state with a candidate that's also really good on the ground. Or I guess a couple of states with candidates that are really good on the ground. But man, she basically, almost won a race already in that state, and she's got momentum. Georgia has momentum. The people know this is critical. Like the Democrats, if they're going to show up, will show up in Georgia, because that's how bad they want it. They want to turn that state blue. They've been trying pretty hard for a couple of years now. I mean, I think
they kind of did last election. Yeah,
I mean, but I think she stands a really good chance, and she's got huge support around her, right? So it's not just the support of the people who follow her, but she's got 2 senators, right, or 2 congressmen that are following her. She's got massive support.
So I think I look at this one. There's a Quinnipiac poll out there that has them tied, 48% between Kemp and Abrams.
Yeah, that's one of those. I looked at like several polls, and depending on who did the poll,
100%,
you get completely different results.
I noted the Quinnipiac one actually has them tied.
Yeah.
Again, it's early, and you've heard me say this before, and it's quite, honestly, it's just kind of pretty well known, but it's hard to beat an incumbent. I will give you that. Abrams, she's got a following, right? She does. I will say this about Stacey Abrams. She is one of those that she just kind of takes a punch, but just keeps coming back, almost like the Energizer Bunny, right? She's there. And I think she's, I don't think she wins this fall. I don't think she knocks off the incumbent Kemp. I really don't. I think in the state of Georgia, I think Kemp takes this thing. I will give Abrams some credit. I think she's going to keep it close, and I don't think we will hear the last of her if the defeat comes this fall. I think she's one of those, honestly, that I think she's pretty well known in the country, and I think she's someone who I think has national aspirations at some point.
Oh, I agree with you. And she's got a really cool story too. Like she's a fiction author. Also a lawyer, right? I mean, she's got an incredible story, but I think she stands a really good chance. I'm not going to call it. And you know what? Kemp is very popular, but he's also had some scandals. I mean, he got involved with that massage envy scandal because they said he failed to investigate it because he was getting money from donors, like a lot of money. Yeah. And then there was the voter information scandal. I mean, what's a better way to burn voters by leaking their social security numbers and all their all their voter information and personal information?
But let's not forget, he's also survived the onslaught of Donald Trump.
True.
I mean, and he walked right through that when people thought that would burn him, and he kept right on a cruising. So I think he's a tough candidate.
Yeah, but this is another one where Donald Trump could burn Kemp's chances in this.
Oh, that he could. I mean, there are a number of people that say that Donald Trump came in, the 2020 runoff elections, right, that brought Ossoff and Warnock into the Senate seats. A number of people said Trump's screwed that away for the GOP that fall.
But all I'm saying is that Trump's sway in this is going to have a bigger effect in the actual governor's race than it would have than it did in the primaries. The effect is going to be bigger in the actual race than it is in the so if he comes out and says something, if Trump talks about Kemp any time between now and November, Kemp might just be screwed.
We'll see. I mean, again, I think it's going to be a close race, but I think Kemp takes it. But I think I was looking at the polls from Georgia. There is definitely, this one stays fairly tight. Now, there's Senate races. I know we're not talking Senate races, but I look at those polls now. There's definitely a wider gap in between Warnock and Walker there. So, I mean, Herschel Walker is just kind of keeps bumbling through, and he's sort of spiraling downhill. So,
oh, yeah, he needs to keep talking, too. He needs to keep running his mouth.
Well, so that'll be an interesting one. There's going to be a lot of eyes on Georgia this year, I think. Well, that Senate race I just mentioned, but also the governor's race is definitely one to keep an eye on there, and it's going to be hotly contested.
So I mentioned people being good on the ground, so I'm going to segue into Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Because Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania is really good on the ground. I mean, he was on a podcast like quite some time ago, but I went back and listened to it before we talked because I want to get a couple talking points. I mean, he's like crazy, the amount of work on the ground that he does, just knocking on people's doors. He's a great communicator, and he barrels through rural Pennsylvania like nobody's business. I mean, and on the podcast he said, I show up, I listen, and I bring results, and that's a really good message, Republican or Democrat. That's really good because it shows he is in tune and engaged in what people want to hear, Democrat or Republican.
So, I mean, you bring up a point, right? I mean, those are good points.
And Mastriano's an idiot. Too.
Well, so he's running against, and I want to talk a little bit about Mastriano. Now, Mastriano, he survived the primary. He came out ahead, knocked off McCormick. Now I was confusing that with Oz. I'm sorry. Mastriano survived the primary where I think it was Lou Barletta is who he knocked off from the Republican side. If you know anything about Mastriano, he's a retired Army colonel, so he's a career Army person. He has the endorsement of former President Donald Trump.
Which is great for Shapiro.
Well, so he's very much in the Trump camp, Mastriano is.
Yep.
And so I have heard news interviews with Mastriano where he has said, I'm going to make Ron DeSantis look like a little amateur. Yeah. That is how in tune I am with the whole MAGA thing.
Which is also scary as fuck.
Well, so Mastriano has said that depending on the results of if he is the governor of Pennsylvania, if a Republican does not win in 2024, he likely will not certify the results. These are things he's saying that he's putting out. I'm pretty sure he has come out and said that he is against abortion in absolutely all cases, and his goal is to shut it down in Pennsylvania. He believes 100% that the election in 2020 was a fraud, and he pitches that at stop after stop after stop. But I will say this, looking at the polls right now, Shapiro's sitting there at about 49%. Mastriano's at about 46 or 45%. He's only a few points behind him. I mean, it's a fairly close race.
It's close, but at the end of the day, Shapiro, right? He puts it out there like it is. He's like, I'm here for people who want good schools, people who want job opportunities, people who want safe communities, and people who just don't want to get screwed. And that's a way better message than I'm against abortion. I'm against, freedom. I'm against talking about critical race theory. I'm against whatever that. You know what I mean? That's a way better message. I think that messaging takes him to the seat.
Well, I will say this: given that, looking at kind of how Pennsylvania falls, and given that Shapiro's the incumbent, I would, if I had to predict right now, I'd say Shapiro wins.
Shapiro's not an incumbent. He's a Secretary of State. Oh, is he? Disregard. I got that wrong.
The one that's the one where we don't have the incumbent is in the Senate race.
That's right. That's right.
But regardless, though, I think he does probably win this race. Mm-hmm. But I will say this though, Mastriano he's got that cult-like following, and so but the problem Mastriano runs into is that this, when you're out there and you're saying, well, I probably won't certify the results of an election in 2024 if I'm not happy, and I want to go as MAGA as I can, and this is blah blah blah, all these kind of things. Those work for these guys we're seeing in these primaries, but now when you start getting into statewide elections, this is where he's going to run into a thing. Like you said a minute ago, well, I'm just against abortion. Well, we've seen that's probably not that's a pretty slippery slope now to be coming out and saying it like this.
I'd rather be the guy that, I'd rather have the governor that says, I want safe communities and job opportunities and just not getting screwed. That sounds a whole lot better.
And so I think with Mastriano, I think you're right. I think Shapiro comes out on top on this one, but I think it's going to be fairly close on that one. So I think Pennsylvania definitely one to watch closely. And there are other interesting races in Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah.
Why don't we move from the Keystone State of Pennsylvania down to the great state of Texas and talk about that governor's race there, Phil. What do you think on that one?
You want to go straight into Texas before you want to do Ohio?
I think we'll do Texas. I think we can end on Ohio.
Okay.
Because Ohio, it isn't going to take that long.
Okay, I think Beto's got it. He's still got a gap in the polls, but he has made significant progress. Every person that gets shot between now and that race is going to edge things towards him. Right? I've said before, I don't like villains in politics, and literally, I mean, I don't want to disparage the guy, but I feel like that guy is like a old school Inspector Gadget villain. Like if they just pan the camera down, Greg Abbott's like got a white cat that he's constantly petting, sitting in his lap or whatnot. I mean, the guy literally is a supervillain.
Okay.
Get him out of there. And then his like cross-eyed attorney general, like not to, I don't want to make fun of people, but it's just they all look like villains.
So I will say this, okay? I disagree with you. I do not see Beto O'Rourke winning Texas. Now, I agree with you that he is, because, I mean, we're seeing it. He's moving up in the polls, but the latest poll I saw had Governor Abbott at 49%, Beto O'Rourke at 41%. I just don't see him closing that gap in Texas.
That's great, but again, remember, young Democratic people don't get polled the same way that old Republican, crusty Texans do.
But this is Texas. Right, and so I just don't see.
Guess what?
I don't see the incumbent Greg Abbott getting knocked off. Beto O'Rourke has run for everything in Texas except dog catcher of Austin. I mean, the guy keeps running for things and he keeps getting beat.
Yeah, but guess what? Texas keeps getting bluer.
Yeah, but I don't think they're blue enough.
Texas has more blue since now than they did in the 2020 election.
Now, I do think they are getting bluer. We've seen that, right? And I think you and I have even talked about places like Austin. There's quite a bit of liberal. I think isn't Austin kind of considered the liberal hotbed of Texas or whatever?
Yeah, but even Houston, Dallas,
sure,
right?
they're
San
bigger,
Antonio,
all
the big
cities have it.
Yeah.
El Paso, right? Beto O'Rourke's from that El Paso area. But the state of Texas, Beto O'Rourke has come out and said a lot on gun control, and I will tell you, Texans love their guns. Texas. He's the incumbent. He's up by 8 right now, early in the polls. I disagree. I think that's Greg Abbott's race all day long. Beto will put up a fight. I will give him that. He's going to put up a fight. An interesting thing, though, that I did see, that this does probably play into what you said. Amongst independents right now, 60% of independents in the state of Texas that were polled disapprove of Greg Abbott.
Yeah, how could you not? I mean, like,
whereas 40% approve.
He has effectively like screwed you over on multiple occasions, and
so
you know.
Well, so I will say, right, if Abbott can get those independents, or I'm sorry, not Abbott, if Beto O'Rourke can get a huge percentage of independents, it will make the race closer. So that is just an interesting thing I thought I would throw out there, that Abbott is underwater with the independents, and the Democrats in Texas certainly is underwater. I know O'Rourke has those, but yeah, I'm going to go with Greg Abbott all day long on that one.
Okay, we can hash it out. I'm just saying, come November on the podcast, I'm going to give you a ton of shit when no, I'm just joking.
When I'm wrong on that,
yeah.
Well, I don't see me being wrong.
Fair enough.
All right,
fair enough.
Let's go from Texas now into Ohio. I don't want to spend a ton of time on Ohio, but it is kind of one of those classic, states, that very much a swing state, I guess you'd say. The governor there, the incumbent, Greg DeWine, he's in a safe 15 to 20 point lead. But I want to say this against, challenger, whatever. DeWine is known as a moderate Republican, though. Now, is he totally... he's not 100% just straight down the middle moderate. I mean, he's taken some harder stances on some issues, but like abortion, for example. But Governor DeWine has also, he was kind of one of the governors, I don't know if you remember, Phill, but he was kind of at the forefront of COVID-19 and restrictions. He got a lot of press time in that March, April time of 2020, so he got a lot of press time. He was big on saying, hey, I'm following the science on this. I'm ready to go into lockdowns, mask mandates, etc. He's pretty safe. What's interesting about Ohio right now, though, is DeWine, he's definitely got his people there behind him, etc. But you flip to their Senate race, where they have got a hardcore Trumper in J.D. Vance, who's, again, singing those MAGA lines, and there's a guy right now, Tim Ryan, who's a very moderate Democrat, who's actually in some polls polling ahead right now.
Yeah, by moderate, you mean highly leftist, radical. I'm just joking,
Well, no, but my point there is I look at Ohio, and I think that is something that shows. I think Ohio can show you between DeWine and now suddenly Ryan's rise in the polls. Looks like people in Ohio like that middle ground.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think DeWine's got it.
I think he's easily got it.
Yeah.
But again, it's always a state you watch because Ohio swings so darn much, and we see a incumbent governor who's sitting there right now in the middle in early July with a 15 to 20 point lead against whoever you want to throw at him. But yet then you've got a Democratic senator who's overtaking a Republican. So I mean, it's very interesting how Ohio kind of plays out, and I think it is truly. I think you've said before, Phil, in some of our private talks, it's one of the swingiest of swing states that's out there, and I think I think we'll see that coming this fall. I don't think the governor's race is so much to watch, but I am gonna, and I know you will too, keep a close eye on that Senate race because that may actually be a seat that the Democrats can gain.
Yep, I agree, and it'll be interesting. We'll keep an eye out. But we are nearing an hour right now, so
wow, time flies.
Yeah, it does. So I think you mentioned you had something you wanted to kind of talk about at the end.
Well, I wanted to go in on our parting shots. Before we do that, can you read off our email address just one more time?
Yeah, so we appreciate the engagement, and our email again is CameronandPhill, Cameron and Phill @gmail.com.
Please send us an email.
Reach out, and we'll maybe, if you're lucky, we'll even read it on air. And for all 15 listeners we have.
I was going to say, Phil, that means someone actually has to email us.
Yeah.
So. But hey, if you're the one person that does, you have a good shot of us reading your email.
Right.
With that being said, yeah, we want to do something with the show now is where we each take our parting shot at the end. My parting shot today is going to be, I want to center it around former United States Senator from Arizona, Jeff Flake. Senator Flake was a long-time Republican conservative, very much about the party. And during the rise of Donald Trump, Senator Flake came out and he spoke out pretty hard against Trump. And Trump backlashed at him, of course, and threw it back at him. And Flake didn't even bother to run for Senate in 2018. And he said, I'm not even going to bother because I will get primaried out. There is and he had a very hardcore conservative voting record, but no matter what, he's like, I can't get elected. So I just went back this past week and listened to back from 2018, a David Axelrod podcast that he did with Jeff Flake. David Axelrod does the Axe Files podcast. And I thought it was interesting listening to Jeff Flake talk about civility, but he brought up an important point. He said, the Republican Party does best when it stays away from social issues and it runs on limited government and being business friendly and low taxes and a strong national defense, and stays away from issues like kneeling on the football field and all these other social issues. And throughout the podcast and throughout interviews I've seen over the years, he has stressed the civility, how much he likes people from the other side of the aisle, even though he may agree, disagree with them. He made mention in the podcast about how he was good friends with Tim Kaine and several Democrats, and that even though he didn't agree with them, he still has a personal friendship with him. And I just want to say in my parting shot today, Senator Flake, where are you?
Yeah.
Come back into politics, please. We need that kind of thing back in here. I have been a fan of Jeff Flake's for years, and I would love to see him back. That's my parting shot. Phil, you can wrap it up.
Yeah, so I think, mine's definitely not as much of a discussion, but I did want to make everybody aware. I'm actually excited. I learned this morning that there is going to be a documentary that's going to actually go to theaters and get released about Gabby Giffords. So I think that is really cool. I mean, that's a story, again, quite some time ago, so people may have forgot. Some people may not have ever known, depending on their level of engagement. But she was actually shot in the head, when she was in a break in Congress back home speaking in, I believe it was New Mexico, right? Where she was from?
Arizona.
She was Arizona as well?
Yep.
So we both hit Arizona for our final...
We did.
Yeah, so, but she was a really good politician and was able to, even though the bullet went, directly through her brain, she was able to make pretty much a full recovery. I mean, she still kind of speaks, has some speaking issues and stuff, but what an amazing story. So I think, I saw a clip of it, and they've got, my one of my favorite presidents on there talking, President Obama, and it looks really good. And the fact that they're going to put it in theaters is amazing to me. But I'm definitely going to spend my money. That'll be the second movie I've seen all year in the theater. I guess the second movie I've seen in 2 years in the theater for the most part. But So, that's going to be good. I'm going to go see it as soon as it comes out, and it's supposed to be out next week.
Oh, it's next week?
Yeah, on the 13th.
Okay.
So.
It's just funny that not to take over the end here, but it's funny how you brought up Gabby Giffords, and I was talking about Jeff Flake a minute ago. He said one of the things that he took tremendous heat from Republicans was during a State of the Union address when she is recovering now from a gunshot wound, and she is sitting there. And Flake was a friend, opposite sides of the aisle, but he's like, I was a friend with a woman. He's like, I sat there, helped her get in her seat. And he said when it came time for President Obama, you'd say something and the Democrats would all rise. He said, Gabby couldn't get up. He goes, I stood up and helped her up. And he said, there so she could clap. And he said, I took so much heat from people all over the country where he said, I thought it was a simple act of kindness. So anyway, it's just interesting how you brought Gabby Giffords in at the end. So
yeah,
that's our parting shots for today. Phil, anything else to say before we head out?
That's all I got. I think thank you for listening. If you are listening, we greatly appreciate it. And like I said, get the message out there, like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it so we can stay in business. Not literally, but figuratively.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Until next time, folks.
All right. Later, Cam.